Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am seriously so excited you're hanging out with me today because, well, we're going on a bit of an adventure. We're going to dive into some text that talks about uncovering a literal heavenly treasure. And no, I'm not talking about a pirate chest stuffed with gold coins or shiny diamonds. Actually, it's something way, way more valuable. We're going to explore what's known as the King's Guidebook. It's this special royal law that is perfectly designed just for us.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this for a second. You're playing your all-time favorite board game, or I don't know, maybe you're outside playing soccer with your friends, but suddenly everybody decides they just don't want to follow the rules anymore. One kid just picks up the soccer ball and runs with it, or somebody decides they get like 5 turns in a row on the board game. What happens? I mean, it turns into a giant confusing mess, right? The game is totally ruined. It just ends in pure chaos. Well, the guidebook we're exploring today tells us that life is actually a lot like that. Just like a game needs rules so everyone can actually have fun and stay safe, our lives need a loving guide so we don't just end up in total chaos.
So to get us started, there's this amazing quote from the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 8. It says, "Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it." Just kind of picture that in your mind for a second. Imagine you're walking up to this massive, glowing temple, and suddenly this magical portal, this giant open door, just swings wide open, just for you. It's literally an invitation to step right inside a secret treasure room in heaven's temple. And honestly, the coolest part? Absolutely no one can ever shut this door. It is kept wide open so we can peek right inside.
Section 1. The open door in heaven. Let's see what's waiting for us. So, when we actually look through this open door into God's temple, we see something very specific. We see what is called the Ark of the Testament. Now, you can kind of think of an ark like a very special, sacred container or, a magnificent treasure chest, but it's not holding what you might expect. This ark has something absolutely vital deposited inside of it. It literally holds the ultimate treasure for all of humanity.
And here it is. Here's what that treasure actually is. The royal law. It's defined as a complete rule of life. But why is it called royal? Well, because it comes directly from the king of the universe. But, and this is super important, the king didn't write these rules just to be bossy or strict. No way. It was his incredible, overwhelming love for us that prompted him to write this law in the first place. He gave us these perfect rules to protect us, to guide us, and really just to show us how to live the absolute best life possible.
Which brings us right to Section 2. What is the royal law?
Now, what's really interesting about this is how the law is actually described. It's called a copy of the mind and will of the infinite God. I mean, wow, just think about that for a second. These aren't just some random rules pulled out of thin air. When you read this law given from Mount Sinai, you are literally getting a sneak peek into how God thinks. You're seeing a copy of his exact mind. It shows us exactly how perfectly and how deeply he loves, and exactly how he wants us to love each other.
So how exactly did God share his mind and will with us? Well, he expressed it in 10 precepts. And precepts is really just a fancy word for instructions. You probably know it as the Decalogue, or the 10 Commandments. Just 10. God gave all of humanity a complete, totally easy-to-follow rule of life wrapped up in the number 10. It is simple enough for literally anyone to understand, but it's big enough to cover everything we could ever need to know about loving God and loving the people around us.
Section 3. The standard of righteousness. Let's see how this actually works.
So we come to a really important phrase here, the true standard of righteousness. But what does that actually mean? Well, think about building a treehouse. If you want that treehouse to be strong and safe, you can't just kind of guess how long the pieces of wood should be, right? You need a standard. You need a perfect measuring tape to make sure every single cut is exactly right. God's law is basically that perfect measuring tape for our lives. We use it to build a strong, beautiful character, so that we make absolutely no mistakes in meeting God's requirements. Now, there's a very clear warning here. Comparing God's perfect standard to our own rules. You see, the law of God is the standard by which our character is going to be tested. If we try to just make up our own rules, if we follow a criterion of our own devising, which is really just a super fancy way of saying we made it up ourselves, we are going to utterly fail to secure heaven. It'd be exactly like trying to build that treehouse with a measuring tape you just drew random marker lines on. I mean, the treehouse would totally fall apart, right? We have to use God's perfect standard if we actually want to succeed.
Another really great way to think about the royal law is like a giant, super helpful warning sign, or even a mirror. The law actually condemns sin. It tells us when we're doing something harmful so we can stop doing it and put it away. When we look into this mirror, it shows us right away if pride or selfishness are starting to creep into our hearts. And why does that matter so much? Because pride and selfishness leave absolutely zero room for Jesus, who is meek and lowly of heart. The law is there to warn us when our hearts are getting way too crowded with bad stuff to let Jesus in.
Moving on to Section 4, Revering the King's Rules.
Did you know that we humans aren't the only ones who have this law? It's true. This royal law is actually sacredly revered by the holy angels. That means they deeply respect it and absolutely love it. But why? Well, first, like we talked about, it's a copy of God's mind and they love God. Second, it guarantees that heaven stays a happy, safe place because the sins forbidden in the law can literally never find a place in heaven. And third, they know that obeying it perfects a Christian's character. The angels totally get that this law is the secret recipe for a perfectly happy universe.
So the crucial point here is this. A lot of times people think rules take away our freedom, but this is actually called the royal law of liberty, and liberty means freedom. So how in the world can a rule give you freedom? Well, the only true freedom we can ever enjoy consists of coming into harmony with the will of God. When we follow His loving guidebook, we aren't being trapped, we are actually being freed from the mess and chaos of sin. And we get to become partakers of the divine nature, which basically means we get to share in God's perfect goodness. How cool is that?
And that leads us perfectly into Section 5, Jesus and the Law.
And this brilliantly illustrates the beautiful cycle of how we're saved. It's a very clear three-step process. Step 1, when the law is transgressed, which just means when we break the rules, it condemns us. It shows us we're dirty. It's kind of like looking in a mirror that says, hey, look, you have mud all over your face. But because a mirror, or the law, can't actually clean us, it sends us straight to Christ. Then, step 2. Christ uses His merits, His perfect goodness, to wash us completely clean, forgive us, and give us life. But then comes step 3. Jesus doesn't just say, okay, go jump right back in the mud. Nope. Christ points us right back to the law, showing us exactly how to stay clean and live happily. They are the absolute ultimate team.
Wow, we've covered some amazing ground today, haven't we? We've explored this open door in heaven, looked inside the ark, and discovered that God's royal law is really just a giant expression of His love, perfectly designed to lead us straight to Jesus. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final question to think about. How will you let the loving King's guidebook change your heart today? Just remember, it's a perfect measuring tape to help you build an incredible life. Thank you guys so much for exploring this heavenly treasure with me today. Keep learning, keep asking those great questions, and I'll catch you next time.